I watch episode 51 of Pokémon every year because I watch every episode of Pokémon every year. Episode 51, So Near Yet So Far-Fetched, begins with Ash researching the leaf-wielding waterfowl for which this episode is named. Farfetch'd, the cocoa brown-coated, beak golden, leek holden, this week's soul goal beholden, nears extinction because of its exquisite flavor. Who's that Pokémon? An Entremon. Ash's Pokédex offers him a recipe to best enjoy the delicacy, which hypes him up to capture one of his own. Ash and Brock abandon Misty just in time for their prey to reveal itself. Misty follows the meal kit through the forest and bumps into the human of the week, Keith, who she trusts immediately even though his hairstyle is clearly inspired by his Pokémon. They nicked her knapsack and swapped it for rocks, stealing all of her Pokémon with a literal bait and switch. A scam that he successfully pulls again on the more established suckers, sinking them to new lows and even stealing the Pokémon that they haven't captured yet. Ash and friends alert the authority, who is already aware of the criminal mischief. The officer makes excuses for her incompetence and offers Misty little hope of her Pokémon's return. Having hustled and flown, Keith and his Farfetch'd sit around a campfire during the daytime. Keith beguiles his Lickspittle with a guilt trip, recounting how he saved it from a vague injury that Keith probably caused as well. He garners its sympathy through self-pity and the accoutrement of acute trauma, emotionally manipulating his accomplice to keep accomplishing, convinced that Farfetch'd's most valuable skill is that it's valuable, and that it must continue to exploit itself in order for Keith to acquire stronger Pokémon that he can exploit as well, implying that if Farfetch'd doesn't get its numbers up, it'll go in the pot. The more independent Mallard escapes their encampment and makes its way back to its own abusive owner. Misty roughly interrogates the wayward waddler for the whereabouts of her more appreciated water monsters, an abuse for which the officer alone has no comment. After Keith and Farfetch'd commit another side hustle, Psyduck sniffs them out and is again insulted for successfully doing what it was told to do, instead of simply arresting him and returning the stolen Pokémon. They challenge him to physical violence. Armed with Garnish, Farfetch'd uses this opportunity to prove itself to not be as weak as its master thinks it is, but then proceeds to lose twice. Farfetch'd gets a whipping for the crimes of its master. 0-2, Farfetch'd still exceeds Keith's expectations. The main dish can also dish it out. As his orbs of volts rain down on them, Keith pleads to go straight and faces no other consequences. They just let him leave. As the episode ends, the narrator also maligns the muster of the mustard-colored mallard, suggesting that lessons in honesty, bravery, and trust were learned without specificity or respect to how any of those themes pertain to the events of the last 19 minutes. The only lesson Keith learned was that instead of trickery, he can use Farfetch'd to steal Pokémon by force. I don't like this episode. I don't like this episode's title. So Near Yet So Far-Fetched is a pun on the phrase so near yet so far, which doesn't apply to this episode in any way. Farfetch'd's name is already a pun, too good to be true, too bad to be false. So the title just cancels out both puns. They should have called it Foul Play, or they should have just not made this episode at all. Another underestimated duck had its day, but just one day, never to be seen again. To be continued.